My company accidentally sent the layoff list to every single employee instead of HR. I found my name on it. But here's the thing, so did 200 other people who were supposed to find out in private meetings that afternoon. What happened next was absolute chaos, and by the end of the day, the CEO was escorted out by security. Let me tell you how it all went down. And worked at Meridian Tech Solutions for 6 years. 6 years of late nights, missed vacations, and pouring everything I had into building their data analytics department from scratch. When I started, I was employee number 47. By the time this happened, we'd grown to over 800 people across 3 offices. I loved my job, genuinely loved it. My team was incredible, 12 talented analysts who I'd personally hired and mentored. We'd won 3 innovation awards. Our department consistently exceeded targets by 20% or more. I wasn't just an employee, I was a believer in the company mission. So when whispers of layoffs started circulating in early March, I wasn't worried. Our department was profitable. We'd just landed a massive contract with a Fortune 500 company. My annual review 3 months earlier had been glowing. My director, Marcus, had used words like invaluable and essential to our future growth. The morning it happened started completely normal. I grabbed my usual coffee from the break room, chatted with my colleague Priya about her daughter's soccer game, and settled into my desk around 8:15. I had a presentation to finalize for a client meeting that afternoon. At exactly 9:22, my inbox pinged. The subject line read, Confidential, March 15th restructuring final termination list for HR processing. I remember frowning at my screen. Why would I receive something meant for HR? I figured it was a mistake, that someone had accidentally CC'd the wrong distribution list. I almost deleted it without opening. But something made me click. The email was from Janet Kowalski, our VP of Human Resources, addressed to HR all staff. Except, as I would soon discover, she'd accidentally sent it to HR-all staff, a distribution list that included every single employee at Meridian Tech Solutions. The body of the email was clinical. Cold. It outlined the restructuring initiative and included an attachment labeled Final Termination List March 15th. I opened the attachment with shaking hands. It was a spreadsheet. Names in alphabetical order, employee ID numbers, departments, years of service, and a column labeled Severance Package Tier. I scrolled down to the M's. Miller, Sarah, employee ID 047, Data Analytics, Department Head, years of service 6, Severance Package Tier 2. I read my name 3 times before it registered. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I was being laid off after 6 years, after building an entire department, after sacrificing countless weekends and holidays. I was just a name on a spreadsheet. The office was still quiet around me. People were just starting to trickle in, grabbing coffee, settling at their desks. Most hadn't checked their email yet. I sat frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. Then I started scrolling through the rest of the list. 212 names, 212 people who were about to have their lives upended. I recognized almost all of them. Tom from accounting, who just bought his first house, Rebecca from marketing, who was 8 months pregnant, Dev from engineering, who'd moved his elderly parents from India to live with him just 6 months ago. My entire team was on the list, all 12 of them. I heard a gasp from somewhere across the open floor plan, then another, and another. People were opening their emails. Within minutes, the office descended into chaos. Some people were crying at their desks, others were frantically calling family members, a few were already packing their belongings into boxes they'd grabbed from the supply closet. Priya appeared at my desk, mascara running down her cheeks. "Sarah, did you see? I'm on the list. I've been here for 4 years. 4 years." I nodded numbly. "I'm on it too." Her face crumpled. "But you're a department head. You just landed the Nexus contract. This doesn't make any sense." It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Emergency. Meeting, conference room B. Now." I walked through the office like a zombie. People were gathered in clusters, comparing notes, checking if their friends and colleagues were on the list. The energy was a strange mix of grief, rage, and dark humor. In conference room B, I found Marcus pacing like a caged animal. His face was pale, and his normally immaculate hair was disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "Close the door," he said. I did. This is a disaster, a complete and total disaster. Janet is in the CEO's office right now. Bradley is losing his mind. Bradley Morrison was our CEO. I'd met him maybe 5 times in 6 years. He was the type of executive who gave inspirational speeches about being a family at company meetings, but couldn't remember the names of people who'd worked there for a decade. Marcus, I said steadily, my voice steadier than I felt. Why is my entire department on this list? We're profitable. We just closed a major deal. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Sarah, I tried. I really did. But the board wanted to see significant cuts, and Bradley needed to show decisive action after the quarterly earnings report. Decisive action? We're the only department that exceeded targets last quarter. I know. He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach drop. Guilt. The decision was made above my pay grade. Bradley's brother-in-law is starting a consulting firm. They're outsourcing the entire data analytics function to him. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. You're telling me that 212 people are losing their jobs so Bradley can give his brother-in-law a contract? Marcus said nothing. His silence was confirmation enough. And you knew, I said slowly, the realization dawning. That's why you gave me that glowing review. You were trying to soften the blow. Sarah, please understand. How long have you known? He looked at the floor. 3 months. 3 months. He'd known for 3 months that my team and I were going to be eliminated and said nothing. He'd watched me work 60-hour weeks, let me believe I had a future here, all while knowing the axe was already falling. Okay, I need to stop here for a second because this is where everything changed. 3 months. My director knew for 3 months that my entire team was being sacrificed for nepotism, and he said nothing. Subscribe if you think what comes next was completely justified. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever found out your boss was lying to your face about your job security? Because what I did next got the CEO escorted out by security, and I still can't believe I actually went through with it. I left Marcus standing in that conference room without another word. My mind was racing, pieces clicking together like a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving. The quarterly earnings report had been fine, not spectacular, but fine. Certainly not bad enough to justify laying off 200 people, but Bradley had been under pressure from the board for months, pressure to show he was making tough decisions and optimizing operations. And now I knew why he'd suddenly become so confident in his strategy. I went back to my desk and started digging. 6 years in data analytics had taught me one thing: everything leaves a trail. I pulled up every contract proposal, every budget allocation, every email chain I had access to. I wasn't looking for anything specific at first. I was just looking for the truth. I found it buried in a shared drive folder that someone had forgotten to restrict access to. Bradley's brother-in-law, a man named Victor Reeves, had incorporated his consulting firm exactly 4 months ago. His first and only proposed client, Meridian Tech Solutions. The contract was worth $18 million over 3 years, roughly twice what it currently costs to run our entire analytics department internally. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the email chain between Bradley and Victor dated back 7 months. 7 months ago, they'd been planning this. They'd mapped out exactly which departments would be restructured and how the work would be funneled to Victor's company. There were even jokes about cleaning house and trimming the fat. 212 employees were fat to be trimmed, lives to be destroyed so Bradley Morrison could enrich his family. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. I had evidence of what's essentially corporate fraud, or at least a massive breach of fiduciary duty to shareholders. The question was, what was I going to do with it? I thought about my team, about Priya, who trusted me when I recruited her from her previous job, about Marcus, who had looked me in the eye for 3 months and lied, about Rebecca, 8 months pregnant, who was probably on the phone right now trying to figure out how she'd afford her hospital bills. I made my decision. I forwarded everything, every email, every contract, every incriminating document to 3 places: the board of directors, our largest institutional shareholder, and a reporter at the Wall Street Journal who I'd met at a conference 2 years ago. Then I walked back to the main floor. By now, the office was in full meltdown mode. HR was trying to do damage control, pulling people into private meetings that had originally been scheduled for that afternoon. But it was too late. Everyone had seen the list. Everyone knew. I stood on a chair in the middle of the open floor plan. I'd never done anything like this in my life. I was the quiet one, the one who led through data and careful analysis, not dramatic gestures. But sometimes careful analysis leads you to dramatic conclusions. "Can I have everyone's attention?" I called out. The murmuring died down. 200 faces turned toward me. My name is Sarah Miller, and like many of you, I found out this morning that I'm being laid off, but I also found out why we're being laid off. I told them everything about Victor Reeves, about the $18 million contract, about the emails joking about trimming the fat, about how our jobs weren't being eliminated because of performance or budget. They were being eliminated so Bradley Morrison could make his brother-in-law rich. The room erupted. I don't know who called security. Maybe it was Janet from HR, desperately trying to contain the situation. Maybe it was Marcus, who I saw slip out during my speech. But 20 minutes later, 2 security guards appeared not for me, but for Bradley Morrison. The board had received my email. So had the shareholder. They'd called an emergency meeting and Bradley had been summoned. I watched through the glass walls of the executive suite as Bradley Morrison, the man who called us family at every quarterly meeting, was escorted out of the building he'd run for 8 years. His face was red and he was shouting something, but I couldn't hear what he said. I didn't need to hear it. The image was enough. The aftermath was complicated, as these things always are. The layoffs weren't completely reversed. The company was genuinely in a difficult financial position, partly because of Bradley's mismanagement, but they were reduced by half. 106 people kept their jobs. The contract with Victor Reeves was voided. He threatened to sue, but once our lawyers showed him the evidence of collusion, he quietly disappeared. Marcus was demoted and eventually left the company. I heard he's working at a much smaller firm now. I've never spoken to him again. As for me, I was offered my job back. The interim CEO, a board member named Patricia Chen, personally called to apologize and asked me to return. I said no. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I realized something important during those chaotic few hours. I'd given 6 years of my life to a company that saw me as a line item on a spreadsheet. I'd sacrificed vacations, relationships, and pieces of myself for people who would cut me loose the moment it was convenient. I deserved better. We all did. I took my severance package and started my own consulting firm. It's small, just me and 3 former team members who reached out after everything happened. We're not getting rich, but we're doing work we believe in for clients who treat us like partners instead of resources to be allocated. Last month, I got an email from Priya. She's at a new company now, one that actually values its employees. Her daughter's soccer team won their championship, and she wanted to thank me for standing on that chair, for telling the truth, for showing her that sometimes the right thing to do is also the scary thing. I cried when I read her message. Good tears this time. The mass layoff blunder at Meridian Tech Solutions made the business news for about a week. Bradley Morrison's name became a cautionary tale in corporate governance circles, but for those of us who lived through it, it was more than a news story. It was a reminder that companies aren't families, no matter what they say, that loyalty should be earned, not assumed, and that sometimes the only way to survive a corrupt system is to expose it and walk away. If you're in a situation where you feel disposable, where your work is undervalued, where the people in charge see you as nothing more than a cost to be cut, please know that you deserve better. Your skills, your dedication, your humanity, they matter, even if your employer doesn't see it. And if you ever find yourself accidentally CC'd on an email that changes everything, take a deep breath, screenshot everything, and remember that the truth has a way of coming out, one way or another. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos. Every single one of these stories comes from real people who've been through real workplace nightmares, and sharing them helps others know they're not alone. If you have your own story about toxic bosses, terrible HR, or workplace injustice, we'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments or send it to us for a chance to be featured in an upcoming video. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, you're worth more than any job.